with your host, Chris Parsons.
What's going on, guys? My name's Chris. I'm with my co-host GP Falone, and today we have special guest Bill Boyles, and we're going to be talking about title. Now, Bill is a VP of Title Operations for Title Financial Company. I'll let him do a great intro. So, Bill, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm Bill Boyles. I'm the Vice President of Title Operations for the Title Financial Corporation of Wyoming. I have about 35 years of experience in the title insurance business. I have been a part owner and a manager of a title insurance company for 30 years. I was also a senior underwriter for a national title insurance company. And presently, as I said, I am with Title Financial Corporation of Wyoming. For the local folks, the Title Financial Corporation of Wyoming is the owner of the parent company of Laramie County Abstract and Title, which is a well-established title company in Laramie County.
Cool. And what made you get into title in the first place?
Well, that's kind of funny. We have kind of a joke in the title insurance business that nobody ever woke up and said, I'm going to go into the title insurance business unless your family was in the title insurance business. I got into the title insurance business by answering an ad in a newspaper where a company was called the Title Guarantee Company, which used to be in Casper, needed an accountant. And I answered that ad. I interviewed for the accounting job. They didn't hire me for the accounting job, but there was an office in Green River, Wyoming that needed some help. So that's how I got into the title insurance business, strictly by accident. So like many people in the title insurance business, I didn't even know what it was or what they did when I started working there.
All right.
Like some realtors out there that are listening right now.
So going into that, what exactly is title insurance?
So title insurance is just the latest and greatest form of title assurance. So assurance with an A. Now, title insurance has been in the state of Wyoming since the early 70s. There was some title insurance in Wyoming prior to that in the 60s, but it didn't become the vehicle of title assurance until the early 70s. So title insurance is just the latest and greatest way of assuring purchasers and lenders who are interested in real property that they are getting what they bargained for. So an owner's policy of title insurance is what is used in the real estate industry to prove and to assure that a seller owns the property and what liens and encumbrances are against that property, and to assure the buyer that they are getting title to the property that they bargained for in their contract. So in the past, title assurance was done with abstracts and title opinions in the first half of the 20th century in Wyoming and many other places in the nation. And that worked well until the value of property started to increase astronomically, and an attorney's opinion and an abstract didn't secure the interests that people needed to be secured. So that's why you see a lot of title companies that have the name abstract in their title, for instance, Laramie County Abstract and Title, because originally they were an abstract company and created abstracts. The abstract was then delivered to a lawyer, and the lawyer would give his opinion. So long as the lawyer wasn't just off his rocker, there was no recourse against the attorney for his opinion. So if the opinion was wrong, you could not get money from the attorney. So title insurance fixed that, because if the title insurance policy is wrong, then the insured under the policy can file a claim under the policy, just like you would file a claim under any type of an insurance policy.
Okay. So, so what's the difference between the abstract and what we're doing now?
Well, an abstract, I wish I could show you an abstract, but an abstract is a compilation of all of the documents that are recorded in the chain of title for a particular property. And so back in the day, before there were copy machines and those kind of things, an abstractor would go to the courthouse or his title plant. Actually, you have to have a title plant in Wyoming to be an abstractor, but that's a different conversation. And they would read all of the documents in the chain of title, and they would create basically an outline or a synopsis of what that document said. So it, was typed on a typewriter. It's then put into a binder. So every deed, mortgage, easement, protective covenant would be in this document, and it looks like a small novel. Some of these can be several hundred pages. And so there's kind of an art to it. You have to put in the recording information, of course, books and pages, the legal description of the land, the grantors and the grantees, what the document says, and it's kind of put into an outline form. Then it's put into a binder, which is called an abstract, and then it's given a certificate. So then that document, you can see this would take days and days and days sometimes to do this.
Uh-huh.
And then that would be delivered to an attorney, and the attorney would read the abstract.
Ooh. And
then the attorney would give his opinion as to what needed to happen in a particular transaction to transfer title. Once again, the opinion of the attorney was merely his opinion. He had no financial liability to the parties. So the reputation of the abstractor and the reputation of the attorney was very important back in the abstract days.
Uh-huh.
Now, title companies do something different. So nowadays, we're in the insurance business, so we're insuring risk, which is a different way of looking at things versus a title opinion from an attorney. So I'm getting a little bit out there in the weeds, but so a title company will essentially do the same thing. They will read every document in the chain of title. They will then make a determination as to the effect of those documents on the title. They will then issue what is called a title commitment. A title commitment is an insurance contract. And in that commitment, there will be information about the land, the owner, the legal description, mortgages, liens and encumbrances, typical things like covenants and those kind of things that you see. So that is put into a commitment. Then there are requirements that the title company will make. They'll say you need to have these documents from these people, and if you do these things, then we are committed. That's what's called commitment. We are committed to issue you a policy of title insurance. Of course, this is all subject to the terms and conditions of the title commitment, but essentially that's what it is. And so if you meet these requirements and record the documents, then the title company is obligated to issue you a policy of insurance insuring your title to the property.
Okay. So you take care of what the abstract was, but actually, like you said, put commitment behind it, and there's some liability for you. Right.
So it's essentially it's an insurance policy that guarantees that the accuracy of the search, the accuracy of the analysis of the title, and the accuracy of the documents that are executed are all proper. And if they are not, and you suffer some kind of a loss, then you would file a claim under the title policy, and the title policy is required to defend your title, pay the attorney's fees to fix any issues, and to defend you in court if necessary in order to protect your interest in the land.
Wow. All
So
right.
what's an example of a loss on a title insurance? Yeah.
So for instance, you could suffer a loss for unpaid taxes, suffer a loss for a missed mortgage if there's a mortgage on the property that wasn't discovered, impersonation, forgery, fraud. When you're buying property from an entity, for instance, from a corporation or LLC or something, the title company will make sure that the person who is executing the legal documents to transfer the title, in fact, has authority to do so.
Sure.
There are basic risks that the title company covers. So, for instance, like I said, you have fraud and forgery. Undue influence. For instance, an older person who is being taken advantage may sign a deed. You can have people that aren't in their right minds, probably. That are legally unable to execute documents.
Mm-hmm.
So that's legally incompetent. Impersonation is covered. So.
Wow.
The other thing that is covered that people really don't understand is the marketability of the title. So that's kind of a legal term, which means that if you are in a contract to buy property, so if you're a seller and you're in a contract with somebody to sell the land, the purchaser of that land under the terms of the contract can back out of the contract if there's not marketable title. And so that's one of the things that we ensure is that you have marketable title, and that when you go to sell that property, the buyer of that property will not be able to enforce the terms of the contract due to marketability. That's kind of a simplistic way of explaining it. It's a little more complicated than that in the law, but that's one of the things that they cover. The other thing that a lot of people...
I was going to say, is marketability the same as like when you hear clear title? Like, does this property have clear title?
So, JP, that is a way to think about it. Clear title is kind of a misnomer. It's a term that is used to mean a lot of different things. But yes, marketability of title would affect clear title.
Yeah.
The other thing that people don't think about as often as they should, especially in the residential setting, if you're in a platted subdivision, you probably don't think about this a lot. But the other thing that a title policy does ensure is your ability to access the land. So in Wyoming, access to property, legally established access, not physical access, but legally established right of access is insured. And if you're dealing with rural property or property that's outside of the city limits or is not in the platted subdivision, even if it's in the city limits, the question of access becomes extremely important. So if you ever meet somebody or know somebody that had an access problem to their land, they will tell you some really bad tales.
Right.
That's one of the things. So that's one of the things that title companies look for specifically, is to make sure that there's good legal access to the land.
Yeah, I actually did a deal a couple years ago where the title company found that there was an easement that was recorded, but they were trying to figure out where how they're getting access to the property, because they were finding that there was like, you had to go through this other dude's land to get into the house property, and then find out both parties had signed a piece of paper, but the address was wrong. And so then the people that bought the house go back to sell the property 4 years later, and they can't find that document anymore. And I remember it was a big issue when I sold it to them, and then the neighbors went ahead and closed off access to the property. So they ended up creating the true access off the road for the address, but the neighbors were like, until you provide me that document, we're going to go ahead and close this off. And they dug a trench because they had trenching equipment and stuff. And everything. I mean, it was crazy. Like, they called me up and they're like, JP, I need your help. And I was like, what's going on? They're like, they just shut our road off. And I was like, shut up. He's like, yeah. They're like, they're done. They said, they're tired of us driving across their land to get to the house. And so they're like, until you can provide me some sort of documentation that shows that you guys still have legal access to this property, we're gonna continue to do business as usual, and you guys can't come through here anymore. And I was like, dude, he was like, yeah, I totally remember that this was an issue when we bought this property. And I said, well, do you have that document? And I was like, because I didn't have it, and I had already switched companies and stuff. And so he was just like, well, he's like, I don't care. We'll just go ahead and create the new access and just get it sold. So I was like, all right, well, if the new buyers have an issue, they can start their search down at the courthouse or get a hold of the title company and see if they can find it again. But I couldn't even remember what the address was that they had actually recorded it under, all this stuff. So I was just like, dude, I can't make any guarantees that will get resolved while you're living here. So, but it was pretty nutty.
Yeah,
so.
There's a lot of horror stories on access I could relate to. So in Wyoming law, so there's essentially two kinds of access or easements that you can have. There's what they call easements in gross, which is an easement to a person. So for instance, I can give JP an easement across my land. It says, Bill gives JP an easement across this property. Well, that is called an easement in gross because it goes to a person. What Wyoming law likes are appurtenant easements. And so an appurtenant easement is just like any appurtenance to land, a house, a garage, whatever. So an appurtenant easement is an easement that goes with the land and not with the person. And those are the kind of easements that the Wyoming Supreme Court recognizes, and they have some tests for them. But if you're ever in a situation where an access easement needs to be created, it's very important that the attorney that you use or some other party understands the difference between an appurtenant easement, how they are created, what needs to be in the legal document, and a easement in gross. Now, you can transfer an easement in gross if it's permissible under the document, but it's not really an interest in real estate the way an appurtenant easement would be. So that's what you want to see. Then you don't have to worry about transferring it. If you have an appurtenant easement, which is properly legally established, it goes with the land just like any other appurtenance to the land would be. So you don't have to repeat it in your documentation over and over and over again. You would need to do it if you had an easement in gross, though. You would have to repeat that easement in gross in every document that you record going forward. So, those are the kind of things that title companies, we look for those things. We analyze those things. We will communicate with the parties in the title commitment what we feel, what we require, I should say, what we require in order to issue the title insurance policy. So I'll just go into the requirements a little bit. So, JP, so this is kind of interesting. When people talk to the title company about the legal documents, the title commitment says that the documents have to be satisfactory to the title company. Sometimes you'll get into discussions with various parties about documents that say, this document is fine, blah, 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 you need to insure it. But if the title company doesn't like it, they don't have to accept it. So
Wow.
if you read the commitment, it says document satisfactory to the company to insure the estate.
Hmm.
So I would say that the title insurance businesses claims in Wyoming, I would say the vast majority of them have an access issue component to them.
Sure. I can see that. I've seen the whole like, we're selling a piece of land and it's landlocked by 4 other pieces of land. And they're like, hey, you own a piece of Wyoming, but you can't use it.
You better get an airplane.
That's right.
You can't get there from here.
That's right. It's super cheap. It's only $15,000 for 40 acres.
We've all seen those.
Middle of nowhere.
So comparing the old way of doing things, like with the abstract, versus the new way of doing things, why is the new way better? I'm assuming that the new way is going to be better since that's the way we're doing it now. But in your own words, why is that better?
Well, because of the financial responsibility of the title insurance company. So like I said, if you had a title problem based on an attorney's opinion, as long as there wasn't gross negligence, you had no cause of action against the attorney. The attorney just says, well, sorry, I was wrong. See you later, bye. But if in the title insurance scenario, you have a policy of insurance that backs your title to the land. So if there's an issue, then you have a title insurance company that will financially take care of the issue for you. So just like if your house burns down, your fire insurance will give you money to build your house back. Same kind of theory with title insurance. If your title burns down, your title insurance company will help get that title fixed.
Okay.
So is
Gotcha.
there a deductible like a regular insurance with title insurance?
No, title insurance is very inexpensive. So if you're a buyer, usually in a residential situation, the seller of the property buys your title insurance policy. And the reason for that is because the seller is using that title insurance property to prove that he is the owner of the property and can sell it. Now, the buyer of the property, if he's buying cash, he doesn't need to buy a title insurance policy. But if he has going to get financing, then he needs to purchase a lender's policy for the lender, because you have to understand that the lender has an interest in the land as collateral, and they want to make sure that the mortgage that they place upon the land is in first lien position and that nobody can gain priority over the lien of their mortgage. So there's 2 policies issued in the typical residential transaction. Now, once that premium is paid, there are no other premiums due, and there are no deductibles in a claim situation. So it's probably the cheapest insurance you'll ever get.
Nice.
So do you see a lot of abstracts still happening? Or is that pretty much gone by the wayside at this point?
No, that's gone by the wayside. I seriously doubt that you can go to a title insurance company today in a residential setting and have them agree to provide you an abstract. And if they did, it would be extremely expensive. We do see some mineral abstracting occasionally, because there's not title insurance available for mineral estates. So you might see title companies doing some abstracts for minerals, but I would say on a daily basis, title companies do not do abstracts anymore, at least not in Wyoming.
Okay. And does title work pretty much the same throughout all 50 states, or are there variations between?
There are variations quite significantly between the East Coast and the West Coast. There's a lot of differences.
Mm-hmm.
Different title insurance policies and different types of coverages happen. The way we search title in the West versus the East is different. The way title companies think about risk is different. Of course, each state has its own state laws, and so you have to understand the state law that you're working in regards to real estate law. Wyoming is kind of unique in one aspect, which is how people take ownership of land. So we use what is called tenancy by the entireties for a married couple. They can take title as tenants by the entireties, which is kind of unique in the United States. We're one of the few states that has really true tenancy by the entireties. And so what is Bill talking about? So when you buy a piece of property as a married couple and you take title as tenants by the entireties, it's a derivative of the word entirely. So you are considered under the law to be one person. So you own the title entirely together, and it's not separate. Your spouse cannot deed away their interest in the land. Your spouse cannot mortgage their interest in the land because they don't own it by themselves. They own it entirely with their spouse.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of unique in Wyoming law. The benefit of that is that conversely, the title cannot be attacked through just one of the spouses. So, for instance, if you go out and get in a car wreck and kill somebody and they sue you, well, they sue you individually. They cannot attach your tenancy by the entirety's property because you own it entirely with your spouse. So the same thing would work for judgments and tax liens, and except for federal tax liens, of course. But so one set of problems against one spouse will not attach to tenancy by the entirety's property. So the other thing that we do in Wyoming, which is different in almost every other state, is we use mortgages to secure collateral for a lender. Most other states use deeds of trust. So we sometimes see law firms and lenders from out of state that are doing business in Wyoming don't understand this idea, because mortgages are kind of archaic compared to deeds of trust in other states. But anyway, we're a mortgage state because the Supreme Court, way back at the turn of the century, of the 1900s, I guess, said we were. Although deeds of trust are statutory, they're just not used because we're a lien theory state, not a title theory state, and that's a whole nother conversation.
So with the changes, like, because I think we talked about this at one point, is the electronic filings systems of documentation versus handwritten and hand carried to record deeds and documents. What's your take on that?
Well, JP, so like I said, I used to be a senior underwriter for a national title insurance company for Wyoming, and I did not permit the people that were beholden to my guidance to use e-recording in the beginning because of the fact that there wasn't a statute that allowed for it. Now the statute has changed and they do allow for e-recording. Now this conversation can go down the rabbit hole really quickly.
Right.
So it's interesting. So the legislature passed a law allowing for e-recording. Now, the county clerks around the state of Wyoming, they can choose whether to accept e-recording or not. Presently, there are only private e-recording systems. So the private e-recording system goes to the county clerk and convinces them to use their private e-recording system. So there is no public e-recording system in Wyoming. So every time something is e-recorded, it goes through private hands. You know, it's a pretty good system as far as these e-recording companies will only take on certain clients, usually title companies and attorneys. They will not generally sell subscriptions to just anybody out on the street. Of course, the public has to pay when you record. You have to pay the county clerk for their fee, and you have to pay the e-recording company for their fee. So one of the interesting discussions about that, JP, is, and someday this will, I predict, become an issue before the Supreme Court, about an original document. So, Bill, what are you talking about? So, when you record your document, e-recorded, it is entered into the county records as an e-recorded document. Perfectly legal. But where is the burden of proof for the original document? So previously, when you walk into the courthouse with a physical document, the government says they have reviewed this document and it is an original document. And you can subpoena the county clerk, and the county clerk will testify that an original document was placed before them for recording. That goes away, in my opinion, with an e-recorded document, because the county clerk is not going to be able to testify in your behalf or anybody else's behalf that they actually saw the original document.
Sure.
So the law is in its infancy, and someday, somewhere, someplace, somebody is going to sue over an e-recorded document. And, you know, where's the burden of proof? How do you prove that that was an original document? So just some interesting thoughts about that. I mean, we do e-record, all the title companies e-record. I'm kind of old school. I prefer to take my documents over to the courthouse and have them physically recorded. My document has a physically affixed recording stamp on it. I just think that's better. But like I said, I'm an old dog, and, you know, teaching me new tricks is a feat. And but the prevalence, I mean, you know, JP, we know this could be a whole nother podcast, I'm sure, but we know that land transactions are going to go digital.
Yep.
And so all of those questions and all of those risks will be examined by the title insurance industry to see what they believe could be problems for title.
Right. I think at some point, you know, and I mean, what they have blockchain, you know, encryption and stuff right now, or they have, and from my understanding now, I'm not a geek, so I have no idea if this is even accurate, but from what I've been told is that with blockchain, there's actually a physical verification from several sources from where it originates and then where it ends up. So I think with, especially in the document space where you have to verify an original document, I think that, you know, if it's encrypted with blockchain, I think that would pretty much eliminate the whole original document problem, because you've got some physical sources that are verifying this information along its pathway from where it originates and where it ends up. So
right. And
you know,
that's true. That's true. And what you say about verification is true from what I understand about blockchain. However, once again, that verification is not done by the government.
Truth.
So you are relying on private sector individuals to do that verification. it's interesting to me because I'm kind of on the blockchain committee for the Wyoming Land Title Association. We've talked about this a lot.
Oh, nice.
I think that, blockchain is going to be pushed very, very hard by the state government. And if you want to communicate with the state government or do things with the state government in the future, it will be done on blockchain because the state has decided that we needed to be the blockchain capital of the world, which, that's fine. I don't have a problem with the concept.
Well, and I also heard that, Bitcoin started in Wyoming too.
Really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
It's crazy.
You always talk about Wyoming being 4 years behind everyone.
I know.
Well, LLC started in Wyoming. So we also, the legislature came out this year with a way to deposit Bitcoin and other e-currencies into depositories where you can't deposit Bitcoin into a bank. So they've created a depository vehicle where you can deposit your e-currency, into something that looks like a bank. But I was going to say, the state of Wyoming, you're going to deal with blockchain when you deal with the state of Wyoming going forward because they're jumping in with both feet from what I can tell. However, that doesn't affect so much the counties. So the county clerk is the one who is responsible for the recording of documents. Now, I'm going to say you are going to have a huge amount of resistance from county clerks to e-record documents on blockchain because they don't have the money to create these blockchain systems.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So that's going to be very interesting conflict going forward between the state and the counties as blockchain blossoms. So yeah, there's, digital closing, digital notaries, instead of going to the title company or the bank to close, you're going to sit in front of your computer, do things on the computer, kind of like a podcast, I guess.
Right.
And
Well,
it'll be a big change.
It's all going to be like Wall-E, where everybody's driving around in those floating machines, watching TV and playing on their phone. So where we're going to go, and it was funny because we went to Florida last week for spring break, and we went to the NASA place at Cape Canaveral, and they were talking about how the effects of gravity on people's bodies and stuff like that. It's going to be the same thing, like the effects of digital life on your physical body, and they're like sitting there doing a treadmill in zero gravity and, sweating in their beads of sweaters floating in zero gravity. I think that's where we're going. I think we're just going to be like, everything you need is going to be in one room. You're going to have just monitors and you're going to be doing everything on a treadmill, bodies don't deteriorate while you're doing your daily routine. He's like, what did you do today? I did not leave the house at all for 24 hours. I literally slept, worked out, and worked at the same time for 24 hours. So,
yeah. And you bought and sold real estate and did a closing.
That's right. Didn't even leave the house.
Didn't even leave the house.
So
cool.
what's one tidbit that you think would be really helpful for listeners of the show? So just realtors, what's one tidbit you think would be really helpful for them just to really understand something that maybe hangs up some deals that you've had in the past?
I have 2 tips for realtors, and I hope they listen to this very carefully. Yeah, I've been in this business for 35 years, and I can tell you the horror stories of things that have happened because these 2 things did not happen. Number 1, read and understand your title commitment. I say that again, read your title commitment. Do not assume because the last 100 deals you closed had no issues that this one doesn't. I always tell people, It's not the 1,000 deals that you did that get you, it's the one.
Mm-hmm.
So read your title commitment. And if you don't understand what the title company is telling you, you need to call the title company up and ask and say, what does all of this mean? So there's all kinds of things that can happen in a transaction that require a little bit of thought and a little bit of action. And if you don't read the title commitment, how are you going to know what those actions need to be?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a big one. And number 2, realtors, your closer is your best friend. So I'll say that again. Your closer is your best friend. Do not, the title company does not do anything except what they are instructed to do. And if we don't have instructions, we can't do a closing. So I would say communicate with your closer as soon as possible. Like silly things that happen that will mess up a closing. For instance, bills that need to be paid. I can't tell you how many times we've walked into a closing over the years, and especially under the new TRID rules, and you walk into a closing and here comes a realtor opening up their file and, oh, here's 3 or 4 invoices that need to be paid while you're sitting at the closing table.
Right.
So, I mean, I cannot tell you how many times that has happened to us. So that messes up everything because, preparing that settlement statement and, you sit down in a closing room for 30 minutes, okay? You don't see the 2, 3, and 4 hours of work that goes before and after a closing. You only see the 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do not disclose to your closer everything that you know about the transaction in a timely manner, it can cause a closing not to close. So those are my 2 bits of advice.
All right.
Well,
So
and I think too, from a real estate's agent perspective, is that a lot of realtors will use the settlement statement as a lazy man's way of, managing the transaction when they should be just having those difficult conversations with their clients. And short of, maybe charging a roof or, a complete replacement of some, sewer lines or major mechanicals. But a lot of times it's these little piddly bills that, get thrown on the HUD statement, the closing statement. And it's like, dude, just have your people just pay for that stuff along the way. That way it's all done. And, and then you ensure yourself having a clean closing.
mm-hmm.
Anymore, I have my clients, I try to get them to pay for all of their, inspections and stuff up front. So that way it's not stuff that I have to chase down at the end and be like, oh crap, I had 7 deals this week. I forgot that I had to push all of these inspections and have them billed to the closing statement. It's like, dude, just have them pay for it on the way. That way you don't have, or you had a $200 bill from the plumber because they had to caulk the toilets in the whole house. They had 17 toilets, just have them pay for it. That way you don't have to deal with having to make sure that, you're doing all the money management for your clients at the end of the deal. Like just have them, it's their house. So have them do it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. That sounds like good advice. The other thing is that, along those lines, if you're having major repairs done, roof replaced, garage door, whatever, maybe, hot water heater may not be on the same level of what I'm talking about, but if you have a major repair, you need to think about getting lien waivers, and you need to think about making sure that those matters are paid for, because if you start getting above $10,000 in repairs,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be an issue for mechanics liens. So that's another thing I would say to realtors is if you're having major construction, you need to start thinking about mechanics liens and communicating with your title company. The title company doesn't know. I mean, if you don't tell them, oh yeah, we just had to replace the whole kitchen at $40,000 because there was a fire. They don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think
Title
too.
company,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the title company doesn't know anything about your transaction if you don't tell them.
Agreed. And I think too, one of the biggest things is that we keep the vendors doing this work in the dark. You know, it's like, oh, well, I was just dealing with so-and-so and, you know, they just said, go ahead and do it. Well, you know, they're not communicating that, hey, we are billing this to the closing statement, you know, and then, you know, and one of the things too is, and I don't know if there's some sort of release of information or anything that needs to be done on that, but giving a copy of that settlement statement to the vendors showing exactly that it was on the settlement statement that they are getting a check from the title companies for that amount. Because I think they're just left in the dark and they're just like, well, they just told us to do the work and, you know, we've done business with them for 15 years. And so that's just the way we've always done it. And then, you know, this one time, like you said, it's that one time that, you know, everything hits the fan and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, you know, you guys owe us $18,000 for all this work that we did. Oh, yeah, we billed that to the closing statement. Oh, well, we didn't know that, you know, and so they're just kept dark on the whole thing. And so it's like, you know, there's different tools and stuff out there to keep people in the loop. And I think it's all about communication. And if you keep doing business the way you've always done, then eventually at some point you're going to forget because you got busy that one time. And then all of a sudden, you know, you're the one holding the bag because the new buyer of that house isn't paying for it. I can tell you that right now.
That's right.
So,
All right, cool guys. Well, I think we'll just end it here. Bill, how can people get a hold of you?
So they can contact me. I sit in the Laramie County Abstract office. So the phone number there is 307-634-7779. We have a website. It's tfcwyoming.com, and that will connect you with all of our, we have 3 offices in Wyoming, so you can connect with all 3 of our offices. We are presently in the process of moving. So we're going to be in our new location sometime in May, depending on when we can get our internet line. That's another story, but anyway. So presently we're at 1819 Warren Avenue, and in the next month or so we'll be at 433 East 19th Street, suite number 1. But all the phones and the website will all be the same. Stop by and visit us. I'm always glad to see customers. I'm always glad to talk title with anybody. You know, we're problem solvers. We like these deals to close. We don't make requirements because we want to. We do it because we have to.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we don't get paid if the transaction doesn't close, just like the realtor and the lender. So we're all in it together. The other thing is I'd just like to tell you something a little bit about Title Financial Corporation. So Title Financial Corporation, which is the owner of Laramie County Abstract, we are one of the largest agents in the Western United States. We have 66 offices throughout Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and I think we have 1 in Washington State. So we're big enough that we have all of the tools and the financial resources, but we're not so huge that we have lost the personal touch. One of the reasons why I went to work for TFC is because it is a family-oriented company, and it is owned by a family for the last 115 years. So I really like the family atmosphere, but we're big enough to have the financial strength that you'd like to see. So yeah, come by and see us. I invite people to come anytime they want. Give me a call. Call any of the people in our office. They'll be glad to help you, and we look forward to seeing you.
All right. And JP.
Awesome. You guys can reach me at www.clixo.com/jfluellen. It's got all my social media contacts on there. You can call me anytime, 307-772-1184 for a free 30-minute coaching call. I think all the links are in the show notes. And if you guys want to just email me directly, it's james.fluellen@gmail.com.
How's your book sale going, by the way?
I haven't checked the stats yet. It's digital right now. So I've got a book out there right now. It's $5.99 on Amazon Kindle right now. It's called The Real Estate Brain, 7 Hacks on How to Buy a House Like a Pro. So, and the paperback is coming out this week, actually. So
Nice.
we're
All right,
running a
guys.
promo on this podcast for that as well. So
There you go. Look for it next week. All right, guys. That's all we have for today. Thanks again, Bill, for joining us. Super insightful. And we'll catch you guys next week.
All right. Thank you.
All right. See you guys.
yeah.
Bye-bye.